Regardez, mademoiselle.
Oh, dear. Someone must have stood there and stabbed him again and again.
There is something in the pocket of his pajamas. Something heavy. I did not disturb it.
Egg.
115. That agrees with my calculations. The man was armed? I did not close the window despite the chill. I thought there might be fingerprints.
Quite interesting. There is something in the pocket.
Has anything been disarranged?
No, mademoiselle.
How many wounds are there, Doctor?
I make it 12 wounds. 1 or 2 are so slight as to be mere scratches. On the other hand, at least 3 would be capable of causing death.
Some wounds seem to have bled more than others.
You see these 2 wounds, here and here. They are deep. Each cut must have severed blood vessels, and yet the edges do not gape. They have not bled as one would have expected.
Ratchet was already dead when those were delivered?
Some little time dead.
The murderer returned to make certain Ratchet was dead?
The idea is an absurdity, of course. Even one with no medical knowledge would have been able to tell the man was already quite dead.
The wounds are scattered all over the torso.
Yes, and you see this wound here, under the right arm, near the right shoulder. Could you deliver such a blow? I have a pencil if you would like to try it.
That won't be necessary.
How do you account for it?
The murderer had unusually long arms.
Please let us not stray into the land of Poe with his murderous apes stuffing young girls up chimneys. I know something of apes. They kill by pummeling or crushing, not whittling away at their victim.
Ratchet thrashed about as he was dying?
On the contrary, he lay completely composed. The bedsheets are not disarrayed at all.
A left-handed murderer could strike there easily.
But of course, that blow was almost certainly struck with the left hand. Yet some of these blows are just as obviously right-handed.
Tell me something about the force of the blows.
Some were struck with a terrible ferocity as to drive the knife through hard belts of bone and muscle. Yet others seem to be haphazard and at random, glancing off, doing hardly any damage.
Someone striking with their eyes shut? In a blind frenzy?
And struck so many times with their eyes closed to make sure they had managed to hit a vital organ or two?
Perhaps the killer was uncertain at first, then was overcome with a bloodlust.
Or perhaps the killer tired of his exertions, weakening, yet still enjoying himself too much to leave off.
Could there be 2 murderers?
Perhaps. Some blows could have been struck by a strong man or very athletic woman. Others are weak. A frail woman, perhaps.
Can you estimate the time of death?
It is difficult to say exactly in these matters. The open window, the cold, you understand, complicates an estimate. But I think I can say definitely that death occurred between midnight and 2 in the morning.
Good day, monsieur. Doctor,
Yes, Mademoiselle Marceau?
I'm going to update Monsieur Poirot on my progress. Will you make sure the scene of the crime remains undisturbed?
Certainly. I will remain vigilant.
Thank you. Monsieur Poirot.
The object was already dead when those were delivered. The murderer returned to make certain Ratchet was dead. The murderer had unusually long arms. Ratchet thrashed about as he was dying, and the excellent murderer could easily strike her, someone striking with their eyes in a blind frenzy. Perhaps the killer was unfortunate for it to them overcome with a bloodlust. He didn't too murderous.
And that is everything I've discovered so far.
We progress, mademoiselle. Now, let us see what we can learn.
The wounds tell too many different stories.
Oui, the matter begins to clear itself up wonderfully. The murderer was a man of great strength. He was feeble, it was a woman, it was a right-handed person, it was a left-handed person. Ah, c'est rigolo tout ça. And the victim, what does he do in all this? Does he cry out? Does he struggle? Does he defend himself? No. He awaits his doom with the greatest composure.
The box of matches suggests the round one belonged to Monsieur Ratchet.
I concur.
The pipe cleaner and the handkerchief are good clues.
Possibly. What can we learn from them?
Remember the bottle I found in the suitcase?
Oui, a sleeping draught, and the bottle half empty. It would be instructive to learn if Ratchet took his usual dosage last night.
What of the residue in the tumbler? A sleeping powder, perhaps, such as that I found in the suitcase. It might explain why Monsieur Ratchet did not cry out when he was attacked.
A possibility. However, in my experience, the usual dose of a sleeping draught would not be strong enough to prevent awakening if one were violently attacked.
The gun was unfired.
He would certainly have defended himself if he had been able. For now, it might be better if you keep the gun with you for your protection. I would not like our collaboration cut short prematurely.
The broken watch tells us the time of death exactly.
Very convenient, the broken watches.
1:15, well within Dr. Constantine's estimate of midnight to 2 a.m.
What you say is true.
Are the false teeth important?
Only to one who must wear them. And why you took for yourself the false teeth of the dead man is not for Poirot to ask. But I hope they prove themselves as useful to you as they undoubtedly did to him.
The small metal statuette. It is very old.
And possibly quite valuable. Take it with you. Learn more of it if you can.
The footprints outside the window are important.
What did they say to you?
The killer may have fled the train.
And gone where? Still, they must be investigated.
I found the inscription REV 1318 printed on the hatband of his hat.
A curious inscription indeed for the hat.
I found only the cigar in the ashtray. No pipe.
Certainly, this is a clue masculine. Monsieur Ratchet smokes the cigar, lighting it with a round match, and someone else, still to be determined, smokes the pipe, lighting it with a flat match.
The letter H can help us find the owner of the handkerchief.
A clue feminine, so dainty, and to have the letter embroidered upon it is so convenient. One cannot complain of having no clues in this case.
If a man killed Ratchet,
After the sociable smoke,
then the woman came in later, not noticing he was dead, and attacked him as well.
also not noticing that she had dropped her handkerchief. Very fortunate for us that she was so unobservant.
The burnt paper could be significant.
What strikes you as most important?
What was burnt and why?
Précisément.
But the paper is impossible to read.
It is possible that some of the writing on the paper can be made legible again if the scrap can be protected, flattened, and held firmly in place while the heat is applied. I will need something with which to handle the paper most delicately, two objects of metal netting that we can place it between, and a source of constant heat. Collect for me these items, and we will see what we shall see.
I should look for the items Monsieur Poirot needs to read the burnt scrap of paper.
This is the wrong kind of hat frame. Think, Mademoiselle Marceau. It must be made of the wire. Regardez, mademoiselle.
I've already...
Quite interesting.
Nothing else. I've already... Nothing else to...
The hat frame...
I don't need anything. It's locked fast. It's locked. I don't need anything. Splendid. I'll put this into my...
The hat frame...
That will do nicely. This looks like a puzzle box. I can't seem to get the piece to move that way. I don't think that... I tried, but it doesn't... That isn't right. And now to see what was so cleverly done. I'll only keep this as long as I need it. I'm no... I won't find anything.
Regardez, mademoiselle.
Nothing else.
A single pipe smoke.
I've already served. I have everything I need to read the paper.
That is most pleasing.
I have all the pieces. All that remains is for me to assemble them properly. The curling tongs have the burnt paper firmly but delicately in their grip. The paper holder is now in place. Now on to securing a heat source.
Daisy Armstrong, c'est ça. I now know the real name of the dead man. And I know why he had to leave America.
Monsieur Poirot, I have documented that case in my scrapbook.
I remember well the case. 10 years ago, Colonel Armstrong was an Englishman. He married the daughter of Linda Arden, the most famous tragic American actress of her day. They lived in the city of New York and had one child, 3 years old, whom they adored. 2 men snatched Daisy from the arms of her nursemaid. The police were convinced that the young woman had some knowledge of the crime and questioned her relentlessly. The enormous ransom was paid, but 2 weeks passed with no word from the kidnappers. And then there was a break in the case. 2 brothers named Perkinson were identified by witnesses and tracked to a farmhouse somewhere outside of the city. The Perkinsons were arrested at the farmhouse where they and the woman not identified had been hiding. They were tried and convicted. At their trial, they implicated Cassetti not only as the mastermind of the scheme, but the man who shot the little girl. The tearful testimony of the Perkinson brothers surprised many, but they admitted their guilt. And in America, the crime carries the maximum penalty. During the sentencing, the Perkinson brothers tried to make the escape. Jeffrey was captured, but not his brother Robert. And Cassetti had vanished without a trace. Madame Armstrong gave birth to a dead child born prematurely, and she herself died. The evening after the double funeral, a broken-hearted Colonel Armstrong returned to the family brownstone on Park Avenue, locked himself in his study, and shot himself. A body was discovered in the New York harbor shortly after Jeffrey Perkinson died in the electric chair. It was identified by a relative as Robert Perkinson. If he was a suicide or killed by Cassetti, was never known. Cassetti was still at large, seen now here, now over there, and still more tragedy was to follow. The police refused to believe the hysterical denials of the poor girl, hoping she might lead them to Cassetti. In a fit of despair, the poor girl threw herself from a window and was killed. It was proved afterwards that she was absolutely innocent of any complicity in the crime. Cassetti was the man, there can be no doubt. He had used the same methods in the past, hired men down on their luck to do the dangerous work, but taking most of the ransom for himself, and always killing the victim if the police were closing in. He had many enemies, that one.
I cannot regret that he is dead.
I agree with you, mademoiselle.
Still, it is not necessary that he should be killed aboard one of our trains. There are other places.
Indeed. The investigation continues. And we progress, no? And now is the time for the assembling of the evidence. Collect all passports, gather information about our suspects, seek out any clues, follow every possible trail.